4, I think.
I'm feeling groovy.
Are you okay? Have you taken your medication today?
I haven't actually.
No, well there you
Go
are.
and get it. Yeah. Yeah, strawberry yoghurt.
Yeah?
Thank you. Here we go. Podcast 94, direct from the Wiggly sofa in Blakemere. I'm Heather Gorringe from Wiggly Wigglers, and...
I'm Richard from Wiggly Wigglers.
You are, aren't you?
Indeed.
And we've got a special show coming up today.
We have. Going to be a good one.
Yeah. Monty is back, and I thought instead of him constantly regurgitating facts on worms, that maybe he should move on, broaden his horizons.
Does he remember these facts? You know, because he goes and does his little bit of research and he comes back and he gives us all these little facts and figures. Does he remember them? Do you ever test him afterwards?
Hopefully he does, I don't know. But of course he listens to the podcast weekly.
Does he?
No. He says, Mum's doing that thing again.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Anyway, if you are listening, Monty, welcome. We have Monty's weekly fact on pigs coming up. But first, we've got to go to Richard, who's interviewing
Rachel de Tame, of all people. Excellent. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. It's a shame I'm not able to speak to her in person, but, you know, I guess over the phone is a good alternative. Thanks for taking the time to speak to me as well.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
We've never met. I've seen you from afar on the frequent occasions at various flower shows.
At various shows.
Yeah. You're unmistakable, really.
Oh, gosh. Well, yes, I'm probably surrounded by film crews, aren't I? So I can't ever get away. I'm always trying to escape, but they always find me in the end.
It tends to be. I think you guys are kind of inundated, aren't you? When you go to these things, I'm surprised you ever have a chance to sort of stand and look and stare at anything.
Well, very often we don't, and that's the only downside.
Yeah, sure. I was reading some stuff about you earlier on, because I've never really had the chance to see what your background was, and of course the internet. Really, if you Google someone now, if you Google anybody, in fact, you can get a whole world of information.
Reams of nonsense.
Yeah, a lot of it is, I guess.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I couldn't quite decipher how many children you have.
I've got 4 now.
4, right, okay. What is amazing is I mean, I appreciate your father had a real interest in gardening,
yes.
but your career didn't start off with anything even remotely resembling gardening.
No. Although, quite interestingly, even when I was doing all these other things, when I was modelling and so on, I was sort of closet gardener, and it probably was quite uncool, you know, in my 20s to talk too much about it. But I used to go on shoots and sort of take gardening magazines with me rather than Vogue, you know. So it was even then there was this latent tendency, you see.
That's quite nice. When you started gardening, now you're in gardening, so to speak, big time.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it more before, when you were modelling, when you were doing other things, when you were working? Did you work for an antiques company as well, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I worked in an art gallery for a while. I think, no, I didn't enjoy it more. It was just different. Yeah. I'm still enjoying the gardening itself as much as I've ever done. I just count myself incredibly lucky that I've been able to broaden it out and actually work in that field as well. You know, it's wonderful.
It is a lovely thing.
It really is. And the people are always very nice too. You know, it seems
there is a lot of truth in that. Yeah, yes. I don't know whether it must be something to do with the fact that gardening is kind of wholesome.
I think so, and it means you have to be patient. Yeah. And I think it does appeal to a certain type of person, perhaps.
Definitely. But more and more people seem to be getting into it.
And younger too.
Aspects. Yeah, sure. I think I guess it's an awareness-raising thing. You know, more, certainly so far as vegetable growing is concerned, more and more
very
people
much
really
so.
Getting into it.
Very much so. That's definitely the new thing, you know, allotments and growing your own fruit and veg. Because I think we all just want to know where everything comes from, and
absolutely.
It's
do you
so
grow
satisfying.
Your veg for your family?
I'm just starting to now, because I've at last got the space to be able to do so properly. So I'm just literally in the process of building raised beds at the moment, and next year I'll be up and running, and that's it, I hope.
Brilliant. What about the kids? How old are they? Do they get into that yet? Or?
Yes, I mean they range from 18 to just under 2.
Right.
So I've got the whole spectrum of sort of
That's quite nice, isn't it?
teenagers down to nappies and so on. And yes, I mean, certainly my 3-year-old in particular is extremely keen, and she's quite good. She can pick out a lot of plants. You know, I don't just say the flower, you know, I say the tulip or the rose or whatever it is, so that she starts to pick up on what things are.
Yeah. And what about the 18-year-old?
Not so into it at the moment. Like sunbathing in it.
There are many things that you think about when you're 18 years of age, and I can't remember gardening being one of them.
No, perhaps that's the one time when it's not in the forefront of your mind.
There's a period in your life,
yes.
when the kind of natural things don't. Certain natural things are a big feature.
Yes.
But gardening
ain't one of them.
So did you? I mean, did your dad used to grow vegetables? Was he?
Yes, he did. He had a really lovely vegetable garden, and fruit cages particularly are the things I remember, picking raspberries and things and gooseberries, and that's what I'm looking forward to particularly.
Yeah.
Very much.
My mum used to make the best gooseberry fool. In fact, I spoke to her today, so have you got that recipe? So, yeah, and because I was looking, I went to speak to a chap called Terry Walton. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you heard him. He's a lovely bloke, and he has a little feature on the Jeremy Vine show every couple of weeks. And I went to him. He's had the most humongous gooseberry bush at the top of his patch, and I was stuffing my face with gooseberries as I was talking to him. And I thought, I've got to get one of these in the garden now, because it's a plant that's so easy to grow, and it's very versatile.
Yes, and I love gooseberry. I love gooseberry jam. I think it's one of my favourites.
I'm sure it's very good for you as well.
Oh yes, definitely.
When you were modelling, did you have to consider your diet at all?
No, to be honest, I didn't. I'm sort of probably a very unhealthy model. Lots of chocolate I found. That did the trick.
Or not, as the case may be. No. I mean, skin has got to be quite an important thing, isn't it? When you close-up shots and things like that, you'd imagine that.
Yes, but makeup works wonders.
Yeah, I suppose it does. Yeah, I mean, do you think about the kind of makeup you wear now? I mean,
no, it's quite funny now, because I've gone from one extreme to another, and people think of filming as very glamorous, and I sort of make a bit of an effort for the shows and things. But most of the Gardener's World stuff I do, you put a bit of slap on first thing in the morning, and then literally don't look again until last thing at night. And sometimes I get a bit of a shock and think, gosh, someone should have told me. I should have powdered my nose.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the guys always seem. Alan Titchmarsh always seems the consummate professional. I've never had a chance to speak to him.
Yes.
It seems like such a genuine
bloke.
He
really is. He's one of life's gentlemen. He's an absolute joy to work with, very generous and helpful, and when I know I'm working with him, I always feel relaxed immediately. And
what about Monty? What's he like?
Monty as well. Well, Monty's got this wonderful passion about gardening, and you can see, that what he really believes. He's obviously a very, very keen advocate of organic gardening, and there's this, this wonderful sense of enthusiasm that he just managed to transmit when he's gardening.
Yeah, sure. That's why he is a key guy in many respects.
Yes, definitely.
So he definitely comes across as being really knowledgeable and very enthusiastic. I've seen him a lot. Again, not something I've had a chance to speak to really, but when you tend to go to shows and what. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to go to many shows this year. Mm-hmm. I did see you fleeting across a couple of days before BBC Gardeners World Live was about to start.
Yes.
Because I dropped off a couple of wormeries for Joe Swift to demonstrate.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I saw you bustling about there doing bits as everybody does. The kind of the madness before the madness really. Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to ask you is I read your favourite flower. Now we are essentially a natural gardening company, and so we encourage people to garden for wildlife. And when I go out and do talks and bits and pieces like that for various horticultural clubs, and interestingly, one of my least favourite flowers are roses, and I noticed that
they're one of my favourites.
Those are one of your favourites, and I think perhaps for slightly different reasons, that they're kind of thorny, and I detest being scratched when I'm doing stuff in the garden. But also, I think for me, people often have roses and they concentrate on the blooms, and try to bump off all the insects that get on that are attracted to those blooms.
Yes.
Like earwigs that munch on the petals and aphids and things like that.
Yes.
So for me, I'm always really intrigued by the detail and the relationships between those creatures that are on the plant. So roses are fine as long as people aren't inclined to kill off the creatures that they hold. But what is it about roses that you find so interesting?
Well, I think various things. I mean, I think firstly, it's just the sheer beauty of them. I do find them extraordinary. And I know what you mean. Some roses, perhaps, the shape of the plant can be a bit ungainly. Sometimes more recently, because the concentration has been on breeding for flower shape and so on, the overall form, the foliage has perhaps been neglected. But, you look at something like Charles de Mills, which is just a beautiful plant with gorgeous leaves, and then you get this fantastic flower as well.
Sure.
And of course, some of the better ones, where you have the repeat flowering, the more recent introductions, wonderful scent. There are a few things I can think of that are looking good in May, June, and yet you can pick flowers in December.
Yeah.
And it's how you use them as well. I'm not particularly keen on that monoculture of a rose garden. I prefer to mix them with other plants, and
Right,
I think that's the way to get the best from them.
Yeah,
and the whole sort of aphid thing. Well, yes, it's a bit of live and let live. And
what do you do? I'm going to put you on the spot now.
I've got a fairly small garden, so it's been able to keep on top of it. Literally, sometimes I just go and brush them off with my fingers.
Right. Have you found that there are fewer aphids this year? Seem to be that
Yes,
the rain has kind of washed
I
them
don't
off.
think it's been bad this year at all.
I seem to remember the beginning of the year, that really lovely long warm period.
Yes.
And there were aphids building up. And
Yeah.
then since the last few weeks, we've had this ridiculous rainfall all the time.
Yes, exactly.
It's kind of bumped them off.
Exactly. But, you need to make sure you've got lots of ladybird towers and things like that.
Yeah,
and then,
sure. And of
you
course,
get
that's something
the
that
predators
the
in.
children can build as well,
Yeah.
and it's a great thing for them. The other thing I was going to say to you is you've recently put together a list of your favourite gardens. One thing I was going to ask you is, what's your very favourite task in the garden?
Favourite
What's the very
task?
favourite thing you enjoy doing in the garden?
Well, I've been working with Croft actually to produce this guide, which includes some of the most wonderful gardens across the country.
Yeah.
And you look at them and you think, well, the amount of work, the manpower, that's gone into creating these gardens and maintaining them at such a level is extraordinary. So when I think about what my own favourite task is, it's really quite difficult because there are lots of things I love doing. I think for keen gardeners, it's the actual gardening that's the pleasure. While it's wonderful to sort of sit back and relax, and I'm trying, to do more of that, and certainly I'm enjoying that, having those moments.
Yeah.
I pretty much like everything, I don't mind weeding, and deadheading is lovely on a summer evening, and edging the lawn is always satisfying because you've got that nice crisp line. I mean, planting, of course, that's what it's all about. So
it is.
Yes, all of it really.
Isn't it?
Yeah, there isn't much that I don't enjoy actually.
Well, I'm surprised you have much time really to do, because you must have a very busy schedule.
Yes, it is pretty busy, but I've been known certainly to go out, quite late at night and garden, particularly in the summer, if that's the only opportunity I have.
Yeah, I suppose that's one of the nicest times anyway, isn't it?
Yes.
When the air's still and quiet, and there's a lot more scent in the garden as well.
Exactly.
So for your roses, I think that's probably about the best time of day
It is
to
pretty
be
good.
out there. Yeah. And this list of your favourite gardens,
Yeah.
I mean, which out of the list, there's a whole bunch. You put Eden down and Trilisic. I noticed you haven't put Heligan down. Is that...
Well, no, really, because I couldn't... Well, obviously there are hundreds of gardens I could have included and would have liked to have included, so it's drawing the line somewhere. But I don't think I've got a particular favourite amongst them. I suppose, Hidcote just sort of springs to mind because it's such a quintessential English garden, and I think it sort of encompasses so much of what we think of when we think about the way we garden in this country. So, but no, each one of them, has something really special and unique to that particular place. So
that is it, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the diversity, I think, that makes gardening so stimulating.
Exactly, and it's also, I think, if you open your mind and your heart to what's out there, you can see as much beauty in formal bedding as you can in a fernery or an alpine garden. So that it's just this extraordinary diversity that keeps me hooked.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got to say, it's been lovely talking to you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, nice to speak to you.
You too.
Cheers, Rachel.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, there we are. Well, I've got to say thank you to Ben Whitmarsh from www.radiolinks.co.uk, who I met at the Radio Academy and gave me the opportunity to interview Rachel, which I kindly donated to you, Rich.
You are a thoughtful soul, aren't you?
Anyway, the big moment is here. We had a preview last week of the moment that Monty walked back through that studio door and sat himself down at the Wiggly sofa for his Wormcast, which we've altered to a Pigcast. So here he is. Bring it on, Monty.
Monty's Pigcast, a weekly fact on pigs. Pigs have big families. A sow can have as many as 15 piglets at a time.
Thanks, Monty, and thank you to the pigs for the inspiration for a Pigcast. And from son to father, here comes Farmer Phil, for no doubt a bit of waffle.
Okay, well, that noise in the background you can hear, the dogs slobbering all over one another. So there's a whole little thing going on with Phil stroking and encouraging this slightly bonkers behaviour.
The pigs didn't...
The pigs didn't mind the dogs at all. We had a look and we went to walking around to see the pigs because I hadn't really seen them prior to today, so it was great to see them, and they were there ensconced in their little retreat, right, about 3 miles away from where they're supposed to be.
The Tamworth pig decided, didn't she, that although it was similar colour to the toast and jam, she was having none of that.
She put the wind up the dogs big time. The dogs were really kind of interested to see what was going on, but yeah, she chased them away. But they're not. I thought they were quite wild, but they're not wild at all. They come up. They're not at the stage yet where their feet out of your hands, but they're quite inquisitive. But the unfortunate thing about pigs, as far as eating is concerned, is they do have a little glint in their eye, and you can see that there's an element of intelligence, which is a bit disconcerting, really, when you know you've got to cut their throats in a few months' time. But there you are. Never mind. It's got to be done. But they are very endearing little creatures.
Large black pig, the one, and the Breeders' Club says they are distinguished by their gigantic size. They are the largest of the kind I have ever seen, and as perfect a make as possible in pigs. Their heads are large, with very long ears hanging down on each side of their face so that they can scarcely see their way. And that's by a chap called Parkinson in 1810.
Ours has got a bit of room for growth then, I suspect, on that basis, but it doesn't see very much. And actually, it's quite interesting, you said they're not very tame. The black one, because it doesn't see you coming, if she doesn't hear you and it catches sight of you when you're a foot from it, it squeaks and runs off.
Yeah.
And the Tamworth pig are amongst the oldest of breeds, but its population is rare and critical. And the animal is of ginger to red coloration and is thought to have descended from wild boars via native pig stock of Europe. And that's definitely right, because we said to each other, the black pig looks like the most perfect pig off a film, and the Tamworth looks a bit like a wild boar.
Oh yeah, you've seen Babe? Film Babe?
Oh yes.
That's such a lovely film. That's probably one of my all-time favourite films, oddly.
It's not oddly.
I saw that, in Canada, a drive-in. I went to see Waterworld, and it was a completely dreadful film.
Drive-in?
But the world, it was in the middle of nowhere.
Did you have the tray on the side of the car like Fred Flintstone and it tipped
mountains
up?
in British Columbia. Yeah, no, it was. You go in there and there was this little big screen in the middle of a field. You go and pull out the car, and we had some bits of snacks and things like that we got from a shop. And we watched Babe, and it was such a brilliant film. And I went back to our campsite. That night we had a bear padding around the tent, interestingly, and which wasn't really interesting at all. It was uncomfortable, to say the least. But the film I stuck, and I've kind of seen it a couple of times since then. But it's had real meaning for me. And that pig, when that little beam of light goes down onto Babe, as the farmer sat there and looks down at his pig and says, "That'll do, pig. That'll do." Just brings a little tear to your eye. And I think there's going to be emotion here when those little guys go off to a better place.
I've got a feeling, listening to this, that so far we've had a certain amount of bravado, but the most likely person to be upset is Mr. Pink Shirt himself.
Yeah. Mr. Pink Shirt.
I've got to go to, on my list of things I must do, is go to a drive-in movie after I saw Grease. Grease is the one, have you heard?
You saw Grease at a drive-in movie?
No, but they go to a drive-in movie. Did you snog in the car?
I did. Quite possibly, yes. Yeah. I don't think Sarah and I had been, because I was with Sarah and we hadn't been together for that long then, so yeah, Nookie was always on the agenda.
What have you got on the table?
Well, a couple of things. There's this cracking little book that's out, part of the Green Books Guide. It's called Greening Your Office. And you gave me this morning. I said, look, Rich, look. And there's a little picture of you. You're hardly recognisable, but I can tell it's you, emptying a bag of bokashi into a bokashi bucket. Presumably this is a photo that's been taken in the office. And it's great. So it's giving people a chance to be able to appreciate how to get rid of their office waste by doing something other than throw it into a black bin liner. So it's a great little book, lots and lots of little handy tips. Quite a lot about flying in here, Hev. Did you read any of that at all? Have you read any? Did you make any notes about it? Anyway,
which of us has been on the most recent flight, Richard?
Yes, most recent flight. Recent, as in the singular.
Which one of us has been on the furthest flight this year? Which one has been on the long haul flight this year?
Yes,
Richard?
but long haul. Yes, but you could get a train to France, you could get a train to Holland, you could get a train to Ireland.
You could. A train to Ireland?
Well, you could. You could go by a ferry
How?
Catch the train terminals either side of the ferry ports. That's a very reasonable thing to do.
However,
you can't get trains to South Africa in the ship.
How did you get to the EM conference in Bavaria?
Well, I wanted to go on the train, but you said no, I couldn't go on the train.
No, you're fibbing.
Too long. No, I'm lying.
You're totally fibbing.
But I did, and of course I did fly there. It's a difficult one, isn't it? These debates, we have these debates in the office all the time about flying, so it'd be interesting to see. I imagine that most of the listeners will be partaking in a little bit of flight travel themselves, and it's a difficult subject, isn't it? I feel bad about flying, but having said that, you kind of think, are you never going to go to a tropical rainforest? Are you never going to go to the Congo to see the gorillas? Are you never going to go to the Antipodes? It's a difficult one, isn't it?
I think if you feel strongly about it, you sit at home in your hovel and never go out, and I'll go and find out about the stuff. Now, you've been doing
I should say, I don't live in a hovel.
That is true, but if you're to be completely green, you should. With no heating and no lighting.
Certainly the people you've got to take the hats off to them that don't fly for that reason. They say,
I don't think we should take our hats off.
I think flying to go to Europe or the Mediterranean for a short 1 week, 2 week holiday when people haven't seen a lot of the UK is slightly mad, because there are the most beautiful places in the world are in Britain. So I think that's slightly unfortunate, but we won't drown that. But it'd be interesting.
You've been up to an energy audit, haven't you? What have you found in the Wiggly office?
Well, Rach and I had a little wander around the other day, and we're going to change some of our lighting. Certainly, going to ensure that things like photocopiers and printers get turned off every night. I mean, there are facts like, for instance, I think that Oki printer we've got, you could probably knock out 1,500 copies of colour printed paper for the same amount of energy that's used for leaving on standby all night. So those relatively small things worth doing. So Rach and I had a little shifty and made sure. I think we seem to be a relatively energy conscious lot. Apart from you, in fact. You're very naughty at not turning your machines off at the end of the night. But I think you're going to make more of an effort as well now, aren't you?
I've already emailed you to say I'm going to make more of an effort.
Yeah, you did.
I do commit to making more of an effort.
Yeah. So Rach and I did that. So that's quite fun. I've got to go and see Pip about changing some those big old-fashioned halogen lights in the barn that go onto the store. Do you know those, Phil? They've probably been there for many years, I expect.
No, we've changed them, Rich. The sodium lights are very efficient.
Are they really?
Very, very efficient.
The sodium lights in the top of the barn.
Yeah. The orange ones.
Yeah.
They're very, very efficient.
Are they really?
Yeah, much better than the white tungsten halogen lights.
Right.
Are they very, very, very efficient, or just very, very efficient?
Well, to give you an idea, that the tungsten halogen lights are about 500 watts.
Yeah.
And the sodium lights, the orangey ones, are about 70 or 80 watts, depending on which ones they are. I
couldn't see, when I was looking at the rates, I said, I can't see the wattage. We couldn't see what the wattage was from the bulbs.
At worst, they're 250 watts, but the 250 watts gives the light of two 500-watt tungsten light. We've done a little bit of work, and we've gone on to a metal halide one on the front of the house, which looks like a sort of massive great thing, and it lights up the whole yard. But having said that, it's only 200 watts. It replaced a 500-watt light that lit up just in front of the house.
Yeah.
So that horses for courses.
Yeah, fantastic.
Talking of that, we went to Phil can update us on his biodiversity course, and our Nuffield Scholars Weekend.
Biodiversity. You know, I haven't asked Phil about his biodiversity course at all. I was astonished that he'd go on a biodiversity course. Even the word biodiversity, I thought for Phil, you know, that would be something to really shy away from. But
it was put on by a spray company, wasn't it?
Well, the reason that the chemical company, Bayer, are connected with the biodiversity course is because Bayer have long sponsored a group called the Farm Conservation Group, that you may have heard of. And that was started as a means of trying to improve and reintroduce grey or English partridge back into the wild, and to ensure that there were habitat. And habitat is one of the most important things to get successful English partridge. You know, they have to have dry places with the right food that's quiet enough for them to thrive. If they don't have it, and this year has been a disaster for them because of the wet.
Yeah.
The little tiny partridge chicks, they get too cold and they die or they drown, and it's just a nightmare, and it's quite a difficult bird to help succeed. So that was the starting point.
Right.
And as a result of that, they've done a lot of work in trying to measure what benefits, if any, various wildlife strips, beetle banks and so on have done in the context of arable farming, mostly in and around Cambridgeshire. And I am a member of that group sponsored by Bayer, and we had a day course basically talking around what things we were and weren't doing, seeing some examples of some of the different funded projects to provide habitat or to protect habitat, or different ways of using agrochemicals so that their environmental impact was reduced. I suppose there were about 15 of us, mostly from this side of the country, and it was quite informative. Yeah, we had a good day. We were at Bruce and Alison Gilbert's over at Cannon Froome.
Right. Yeah,
it was a good day. It was worth going.
Fantastic.
Phil wants you to inspect his set-aside.
Yes.
Because he reckons there's loads of butterflies up there.
No, it's great. That's
an issue that's coming up because, as the listener no doubt knows, because you've told them many times, we as farmers have steered away from planting habitat per se. We've gone towards maintaining a network of hedges and maintaining the natural habitat that turns up in blocks around the farm and linking it together. Part of that natural habitat has been our set-aside fields, and we're just coming to the point where next year set-aside is going to end, so that in theory these fields have to come back into production, which is quite an interesting thing because I think that we've created an area of enormous environmental benefit just in terms of a field that has been allowed to, it's not unmanaged, but it has become a wildlife haven. Yeah. And I was up there the other day and I noticed all sorts of butterflies and what have you that I haven't got a clue what they are.
Right.
And so
great to see. It'd be really interesting to see what they are.
Yeah, well, because there's a bit of a loving going on between Richard and Phil.
Never.
I feel that I trust you with the rest of the show, so I'm going to off to have lunch now. But just before I go, I thought I would share with you that the Tamworth is one of the longest snouted pigs and actually could certainly earn its keep as a professional rotivator.
I have noticed.
Well, that's it. I guess we need to wind up. That was fantastic. I enjoyed
wind
that.
Down, we ought to.
Wind down?
Well,
I don't think we do so much of that, do we? Winding down?
No.
You
but if we wound up, then I would drive you mad again.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
A wind up as in finish.
Yes. Yeah. So that's what I meant, yeah.
Okay.
Oddly.
Why don't we just drift away?
Okay. So it's drifting away from me?
Yeah, drifting away from me too. Will I see you next week?
God, possibly.
Really?
I think so.
Nice surprise. Bye.
Bye. You know, I haven't asked Phil about his biodiversity course at all. I was astonished that he'd go on a biodiversity course. Even the word biodiversity, I thought for Phil, you know, that would be something to really shy away from. But
it was put on by a spray company, wasn't it?
Well, the connection...
Biodiversity we have killed.
Sorry, Phil. Poor Phil. Poor Phil.